The inferno swallowed the sky. Ancient, scarred orbital defenses screamed their dying wail, their beams of white-hot energy tearing through the void, only to be overwhelmed by 1,000 green-streaked missiles. Below, the city of Varkos Prime was a landscape of perpetual night, illuminated only by the ceaseless, blinding flashes of war. Vox channels were a cacophony of fear, 1,000 voices begging for absolution, for aid, for anything but the inevitable. Sergeant Kalen, his face streaked with grime and sweat, roared orders over the din.
Fall back! To the lower tunnels!
Double time! His voice, raw and hoarse, barely carried over the collapsing ferrocrete and the guttural roars of the approaching enemy. Around him, the remnants of his platoon, the Imperial Guard's 103rd Cadian shock troops, moved with grim, practiced efficiency. They were exhausted, outnumbered, and knew with chilling certainty that this was their last stand, or, more accurately, their last retreat. A Lehman Russ battle tank, its sponson turrets spitting hellfire, provided covering fire. Its thunderous cannon boomed, sending a wave of green-skinned Xenos reeling, but more immediately filled the space the dead had occupied. Orcs, thousands of them. A green tide of savagery, driven by an insatiable hunger for war, had fallen upon Varkos Prime like a plague. For weeks the Guard had fought, bled, and died, but the planet was lost. Now, it was about saving who they could, if anyone. Kalen saw one of his men, a young trooper named Alara, stumble, her leg caught under a falling beam. He didn't hesitate. Shoving 2 other guardsmen forward, he sprinted back, grabbing Alara's arm, pulling with all his might. Her face was pale with shock and pain. "Sir, leave me, go," she choked out. "Never," Kalen growled, his muscles straining. A deafening whump vibrated through the ground as an orc battle wagon, a behemoth of scrap metal and crude weaponry, slammed into a nearby building, tearing through it like paper. Its crude headlights, salvaged from who knew what, swiveled, fixing on Kalen and Alara. A shadow, impossibly deep and vast, fell over them. Kalen looked up. It was not a cloud, nor a falling star, but something else entirely. A disturbance in the very fabric of the air, a rippling distortion that defied logic, hung directly above the battle wagon. It shimmered like heat haze over a desert road, but colder, more intense. A strange, almost electrical hum filled the air, overriding even the screams of the dying. Suddenly, a blinding flash. It wasn't a muzzle flare, nor an explosion. It was pure energy, coalescing in the heart of that shimmering distortion. A bolt of force, like a contained supernova, lanced down with impossible speed. It struck the orc battle wagon not with an explosion of shrapnel, but with an implosion of matter. The immense vehicle, a moment before a symbol of brute force, simply compressed. Its thick armor buckled inwards, metal screaming, plates fusing and collapsing as if crushed by an invisible, colossal fist. The orcs on its back dissolved into crimson mist, their guttural war cries cut short. The battle wagon was gone, replaced by a smoking, flattened crater of fused metal and scorched earth. The hum intensified, then receded, the air crackling with residual energy. From the point where the force bolt had emerged, something descended. It was a figure, cloaked and hooded, dropping with an almost casual grace that defied the laws of gravity. It landed silently amidst the chaos, a stark silhouette against the distant fires, its presence a cold, palpable weight. Kalen stared, his breath caught in his throat. What was that? Not an Astartes. Too lithe, too fluid. Not a psycho. At least not one he recognized. He felt a deep, primal fear, but also a sliver of awe. The figure was unlike anything he had ever seen, yet its destructive power was undeniable. The orcs, momentarily stunned by the inexplicable destruction of their war machine, began to turn, their crude weapons raised, their roars returning with renewed fury, focused now on the new arrival. The figure moved. No, it didn't move so much as flow. It blurred across the ravaged street, a streak of darkness against the orange glow of the burning city. A brilliant blade, impossibly vibrant, ignited in its hand. Not the crackling energy field of a power sword, nor the focused beam of a lightsaber. It was something else entirely. A blade of pure, concentrated energy, humming with an inner intensity that made the air itself vibrate. It carved through the first wave of orcs with effortless precision, cleaving limbs, bisecting torsos, a trail of scorched flesh and green blood left in its wake. Each strike was delivered with a power that seemed to ripple through the very ground, sending shockwaves that threw smaller orcs off their feet. Kalen finally got Alara free, pulling her behind a crumbling barricade. He watched, transfixed, as the cloaked warrior fought. The orcs, for all their savagery, were falling like wheat before a harvester. The figure seemed to anticipate their every move, parrying crude choppers with a blur of the blade, then delivering devastating counter-strikes. One particularly large orc knob, roaring its challenge, charged, its massive power claw raised. The cloaked figure met it not with a parry, but a thrust. The energy blade plunged through the orc's chest plate as if it were paper, erupting from its back in a shower of sparks and gore. A strange, telekinetic pulse rippled outwards from the warrior, not with the uncontrolled wildness of a crude psyker, but with a focused, surgical precision. A cluster of orcs, attempting to flank, were suddenly flung backwards, their bodies twisting and breaking as they slammed into a wall. The energy blade then flickered, extinguishing for a split second, only to ignite again in a different hand as the warrior spun, deflecting a hail of inaccurate slugger fire with an almost contemptuous ease. "What in the Emperor's name?" Kalen whispered, his hand instinctively gripping his lasgun, though he knew it would be useless against something capable of such destruction. This wasn't just a powerful fighter, this was a force of nature. The sheer speed, the controlled chaos, the inhuman precision, it spoke of something far beyond even the most skilled of assassins or space marines. The warrior continued its relentless assault, pushing deeper into the orc horde. Its movements were too fast to track, its attacks too devastating to comprehend. The green tide, for the first time, seemed to hesitate, a ripple of something akin to fear passing through their ranks. This wasn't a fair fight, not for them. This was an extermination. Suddenly, a massive, rusted battle wagon, even larger than the first, rumbled into view. It was bristling with heavier guns, its top-mounted kill cannon swiveling to bear. From its reinforced ramp, a hulking warboss emerged, a beast of an orc, easily twice the size of a man, clad in thick custom-made armor, its eyes burning with malevolent intelligence, fixed on the cloaked figure. "What's this then, a new squishy?" the warboss roared, its voice echoing like thunder. "Come here and give the boss a proper fight." The cloaked figure paused, turning to face the warboss. Its energy blade pulsed, brighter than before. For a moment, the two stood locked in a silent challenge. The warboss, a symbol of crude, overwhelming power. The warrior, an enigma of elegant, deadly force. Then the warrior moved. It didn't charge, it simply vanished, reappearing directly in front of the warboss with impossible speed. The warboss, surprised, barely managed to raise its massive chopper. The energy blade met the chopper with a sickening clang, sparks erupting. But the warboss's weapon was made of crude, heavy metal, and the energy blade was something else entirely. It bit deep, melting through the adamantium-laced chopper, carving a path of destruction. With a grunt of effort, the cloaked figure disarmed the warboss, sending the ruined chopper clattering away. Before the stunned orc could react, the warrior unleashed a flurry of blows, not with its blade, but with its bare hands. Each strike was like a heavy weapon impact, sending shockwaves through the orc's massive frame. Kalen could hear the sickening crunch of bone and armor. The warboss, despite its size and resilience, was being systematically dismantled. Finally, with a powerful, focused shove, the cloaked warrior sent the warboss stumbling backward, leaving it open. The energy blade flashed, severing the warboss's head from its body in a single, devastating stroke. The massive orc slumped, a headless corpse, its lifeblood gushing onto the scorched earth. Silence, profound and absolute, fell over the battlefield. The remaining orcs, witnessing the impossible death of their warboss, froze. Their primitive minds, conditioned for relentless aggression, were overwhelmed by incomprehensible terror. Then they broke. What remained of the green tide turned and fled, screaming in a primal, guttural panic, scattering into the burning ruins. Kalen watched them go, then turned his gaze back to the cloaked figure. It stood amidst the carnage, its energy blade still glowing, its presence radiating an aura of cold, detached power. It turned its head slowly, its featureless hood seeming to fix on Kalen and Alara. Kalen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. The threat of the orcs was gone, but this was something else. Something utterly alien, utterly terrifying, and utterly beyond his understanding. The warrior extinguished its blade, plunging the immediate area into shadow, and then, with another impossible burst of speed, it was gone, leaving only the smoking ruins, the dead, and the chilling silence in its wake. Hours later, deep in the subterranean tunnels, a makeshift command post had been established. Sergeant Kalen recounted his impossible tale to Captain Valerius, a hardened veteran whose face seemed permanently etched with the weariness of war. Valerius, known for his pragmatic and unyielding demeanor, listened in silence, his fingers steepled, his eyes fixed on Kalen's grim face. Alara, recovering from her leg injury, lay on a cot nearby, listening intently, her own fear still palpable. "A single warrior, Captain," Kalen repeated, his voice still tinged with disbelief. "Cloaked, used some kind of energy blade, unlike any power weapon, and it crushed a battle wagon with its mind. Telekinesis, sir, but on a scale I've never witnessed. It moved too fast to see. It killed the war boss, their biggest one, in seconds, and then it vanished." Valerius finally spoke, his voice low and gravelly. "You saw no Imperial markings? No Legion colors? No inquisitorial symbols?" Kalen shook his head. "None, sir. Just a cloaked figure, black, deep as the void. It felt alien. But it fought the orcs. It saved us, Captain." Valerius paced the cramped bunker, his boots scraping on the concrete floor. The sounds of distant warfare still rumbled above, but the immediate threat had receded, replaced by an unsettling calm. "Saved us, perhaps," Valerius mused. "But what was it?" "The Administratum reports no unknown allied forces. The Emperor's Angels of Death would announce their presence. The Mechanicus has no such war gear, and psychers of that power are either controlled by the Black Ships or are rogue demons." He stopped, turning to face Kalen. "Are you certain it was not a trick of the light, Sergeant? The exhaustion, the stress of battle?" "With all due respect, sir," Kalen said, meeting his captain's gaze. "I witnessed it with my own eyes. So did Alara, and the crater where the first battle wagon stood is still there. The dead war boss, too." Alara, from her cot, managed a weak nod. "It moved like a phantom, Captain. It was terrifying, but also beautiful." Valerius grunted, a sound of frustration. "Beautiful? In this war, Alara, only death is beautiful to the Xenos. This is an anomaly, a variable we cannot account for. If it is an ally, it is a secretive one. If it is an enemy, then the orcs were merely an appetizer." Just then, a voxcaster crackled to life. A desperate, garbled voice broke through the static. "Perimeter breached. Tyrannid Vanguard on Sector Gamma, recommending immediate orbital static for the Emperor." "For screams!" The channel died. Valerius slammed his fist on a nearby console. "Tyrannids, already. The orcs haven't even been fully purged from the sector." His mind raced. This was an entirely new level of catastrophe. Varkos Prime was a dead world, caught between two of the galaxy's most ravenous threats. "Captain," Kalen interjected, a daring thought forming in his mind. "What if this unknown warrior could be our advantage?" Valerius looked at him, skepticism clear in his eyes. "You propose we seek out a nameless, cloaked entity capable of destroying entire war machines, an entity whose allegiance is unknown, and ask for its aid against a Tyrannid hive fleet." "It fought the orcs, sir," Kalen pressed. "It showed no mercy to them. Perhaps it holds no love for the Tyrannids either. It could be our only hope of buying enough time for some of our non-combatants to reach the last shuttles." A new alert blared from a console. "Massive biosignatures detected, Sector Gamma. Estimated time to impact on our position. 2 hours, standard." Valerius closed his eyes, then opened them, a grim resolve hardening his features. 2 hours, not even enough time to properly dig in. "All right, Sergeant. A desperate situation calls for desperate measures. We cannot simply sit here and be devoured. Our mission now is twofold. Attempt to secure a path for the remaining civilians and Imperial personnel to the orbital docks, and find this anomaly. If it truly holds the power you describe, and if it can be swayed, it may be the only thing that stands between us and utter obliteration." He turned to a technician. "Scan all long-range Vox channels for any unusual energy signatures, any atmospheric distortions, anything that matches Sergeant Kalen's description of this warrior's arrival or departure. Focus on the battle zone where he encountered it." Kalen felt a surge of adrenaline, mixed with a healthy dose of terror. He was being sent to find a ghost, a creature of impossible power, in a city being torn apart by 2 monstrous Xenos factions. This was not a mission, it was a suicide pact. But the alternative was to die slowly, piece by piece, as the Tyranids consumed them all. "Sir," Kalen said, "if we are to find it, we need a way to draw it out. It seemed to appear where the fighting was fiercest." Valerius nodded slowly. "Indeed. A beacon, a lure. We will make a stand, Sergeant, a glorious suicidal stand to draw attention. You and a hand-picked squad will move through the Undercity, bypassing the main Tyranid thrust, to the old Arcana Manufactorum. It's a stronghold, heavily reinforced, but now completely isolated. We'll activate its last remaining defense systems. Make enough noise to draw both the Tyranids and this warrior. If it truly hunts in the shadows of war, it will find us there." "And if it doesn't, sir?" Kalen asked, his voice steady despite the crushing odds. "Then we will have bought a few more lives, a few more minutes," Valerius replied, his gaze distant, already calculating the cost. "And we will die with bolter in hand, as is our duty." A small, hand-picked squad was assembled. Sergeant Kalen, Trooper Elara, her leg bandaged, grimly determined, and 4 other seasoned guardsmen. Their mission? Navigate the labyrinthine, collapsing Undercity, reach the Arcana Manufactorum, and prepare for what might be the final battle for Varkos Prime. The sounds of war above ground were growing louder, the earth trembling with the relentless advance of the Tyranid hive fleet. The clock was ticking. They were entering the maw of 2 beasts, seeking a third, unknown predator. As they moved through the choked, dust-filled tunnels, the air grew thick with the cloying, organic scent of the Tyranids. Chitinous claws scraped in the darkness, and the low, chittering growl of advancing creatures echoed from unseen passages. Kalen kept his laser gun raised, his senses on high alert. The grim reality of their situation pressed in. They were bait, pure and simple. Elara stumbled, wincing as pain shot through her injured leg. Kalen was there instantly, steadying her. "You sure you're up for this, Trooper?" "Better than being left behind, Sergeant," she gritted out, her eyes determined. "Besides, I saw it too. Whatever it is, if it's our only chance, I'll face it." Their path led them through abandoned hab blocks, their skeletal frames silhouetted against the sickly red glow of burning infrastructure. The sound of Tyranid screeches and the distant roars of orcs occasionally pierced the air, a grim reminder of the war above. This was a war of 3 factions, and humanity was desperately clinging to the fringes of survival. Reaching the Arcana Manufactorum felt like a miracle. The massive fortress-like structure, once a bastion of imperial industry, stood silent and desolate, its outer walls scarred by previous conflicts. They breached the secondary entrance, navigating through darkened, echoing halls, the air thick with the smell of stale oil and ozone. Kalen deployed his squad, assigning defensive positions. "Elara, you're with me. We need to get the primary power grid back online. If we're going to make enough noise to attract it, we need every system screaming." The central power core was deep within the Manufactorum, a colossal chamber housing the throbbing heart of the facility. As they approached, Kalen noticed something. A faint tremor, a barely perceptible vibration in the air. It wasn't the distant rumble of war, it was closer. A focused, contained energy. "Hold," Kalen whispered, raising a fist. "Everyone, stay low." They crept forward, their footsteps muffled by the dust-covered floor. Rounding a corner, they saw it. Not the cloaked warrior, but the aftermath of its presence. A swath of Tyranid gaunts lay strewn across the power core chamber, their chitinous bodies mangled and torn, their acidic blood sizzling on the floor. And amidst them, a single hulking Genestealer, its 4 razor-sharp claws splayed, its head missing, cleanly severed from its body. The clean, precise cut could only be made by one kind of blade. "It's been here," Elara breathed, a mixture of awe and fear in her voice. "It's still hunting." The tremors intensified, emanating from a dark recess within the chamber. Kalen felt a prickle of static electricity on his skin. This was it. They had found their quarry, or rather, it had found its quarry, and they had stumbled upon it. Suddenly, a voice, not spoken aloud, but echoing directly in Kalen's mind, a cold, ancient whisper that seemed to bypass his ears entirely. "You, what do you seek?" Kalen gasped, stumbling back. He looked around wildly. Nothing, just the dead Tyranids. The voice was in his head, chilling him to the bone. He felt an intense scrutiny, as if his very thoughts were being laid bare. "Your species. You are a distraction, a nuisance in the hunt. The voice was devoid of emotion, yet carried an undeniable undercurrent of immense power, of detached judgment. Kalen swallowed, forcing himself to speak aloud, hoping it would be heard. "We seek your aid. We face extinction. Tyranids, orcs. This world is dying." A flicker of movement in the shadows. The cloaked figure emerged, its energy blade already ignited, bathing the chamber in an ethereal blue-white glow. It stood before them, still an enigma, but its presence was undeniable, palpable. Extinction is the natural order. Predators and prey. The cycle continues. "What is it to me?" The mental voice probed, a chilling tendril brushing against Kalen's resolve. "You hunt the Xenos, don't you?" Kalen pressed, gathering his courage. "You killed the orcs. You killed these Tyranids. We are not your prey. We fight them too. We could be allies." The warrior tilted its head, a subtle gesture that felt profoundly unsettling. Its gaze, though hidden by the hood, felt like a physical weight. "Allies? Your kind are weak, frail. You die with such ease. What could you offer?" "Information," Kalen said, desperation lacing his voice. "Targets. We can draw them out. We know their movements. We know where the biggest threats are. And we can give you what you want. More hunts, more opportunities to cleanse this world." The energy blade pulsed, brighter then dimmer. The mental silence that followed felt vast, eternal. Kalen felt his hope draining away, replaced by the grim certainty that they had just presented themselves as nothing more than another target. Then, the voice returned, colder, more calculating. "To eliminate a larger threat, a temporary alliance may be efficient. Show me these targets. Show me where the prey is densest. But understand this. I am no savior. I am a hunter. You are merely bait. If you slow me, if you impede the hunt, you will be discarded." Kalen felt a surge of relief so profound it nearly buckled his knees. He had succeeded. He had bought them a chance. "Understood," he said, his voice firm. "We will lead you to them, the central spire. That's where the main Tyranid synapse creatures will converge. And if there are any remaining orc war bosses, they will be drawn to such a fight." The cloaked figure turned, its back to them. Its energy blade pulsed, illuminating the path forward. Then lead. The hunt begins anew. It moved with that same impossible grace, vanishing into the darkness of the Manufactorum's tunnels, leaving Kalen and his squad with a chilling yet undeniable surge of hope. They were now allied with a being of unimaginable power, a force that bent reality to its will. A cold, ruthless hunter. Their desperation had paid off, but the price of this alliance was yet to be revealed. They followed, their hearts pounding, their lives now irrevocably linked to a shadow that hunted in the heart of the galaxy's most brutal war. The ultimate predator had joined their ranks, and the real terror, Kalen knew, was only just beginning. As they moved through the Manufactorum, Kalen noticed that the Tyranid advance, previously a relentless wave, seemed to falter, their chittering calls turning into confused chirps. A few desperate orcs, caught between the two forces, scattered, their crude sluggers firing wildly at unseen threats. It was clear their new ally was already making its presence known. The scent of ozone and charred flesh mingled with the sickeningly sweet smell of Tyranid ichor. They reached a vast, abandoned assembly line, its conveyor belts long rusted, its giant hydraulic presses silent. The cloaked warrior stood at the far end, its blade a beacon in the gloom, staring at a section of the wall. Kalen followed its gaze, seeing nothing but ancient reinforced plasteel. Beyond here, the mental voice echoed in Kalen's mind. A larger organism approaches, a synapse creature, and its brood. Before Kalen could question, the warrior raised its hand, a surge of raw, unseen power manifesting. The plasteel wall, several meters thick, began to groan, then buckle inwards. A deafening shriek of tearing metal ripped through the air as the entire section of the wall exploded outwards, not from an impact, but from an internal, impossible force. Dust and debris rained down, revealing a gaping maw in the Manufactorum's defenses. Beyond the breach, a teeming mass of Tyranid gaunts, hormagaunts, and a few larger warriors swarmed, their chitinous bodies glistening in the faint light filtering from above. At their center, a broodlord, its psychic presence a malevolent throb, directed the lesser creatures. Its scythed limbs twitched, sensing the new presence, its alien mind instantly recognizing the powerful. "Unfamiliar threat," the broodlord shrieked, a sound that vibrated through Kalen's bones, and the Tyranid horde surged forward. a tide of claws, teeth, and living weapons. The Manufactorum, once a place of silent industry, became a maelstrom of organic horror. The cloaked warrior didn't hesitate. It moved, not in a straight line, but in a series of blurs, a dark phantom dancing among the green-brown tide. The energy blade became a living extension of its will, a surgical instrument of death. Hormagaunts were bisected mid-leap, their acidic blood spraying. Gaunts, attempting to overwhelm with sheer numbers, found their charges met with telekinetic shoves that sent them flying into their brethren. Breaking their formations, Kaelin's squad, caught in the wake of this impossible power, instinctively opened fire, their laser guns lashing out at the smaller Tyranids that managed to slip past the warrior's defenses. Elara, despite her leg, fired with grim determination, her training kicking in. This wasn't a coordinated assault. It was a desperate attempt to survive in the shadow of a god of destruction. The Broodlord, seeing its lesser creatures fall, let out another furious shriek and charged, its four arms a blur of lethal claws. It was a terrifying opponent, immensely strong and lightning fast, but the cloaked warrior met it without pause. The energy blade clashed against the chitinous armor of the Broodlord, sparks flying. The impact reverberated, shaking the ground. The Broodlord attacked with a feral intensity, its claws tearing at the warrior, seeking to overwhelm it. But the cloaked figure moved with an almost mocking ease, deflecting the blows, its form shifting and weaving, always just out of reach. Each counterattack was precise, aimed at the Broodlord's vulnerable joints, its exposed flesh. Suddenly, the warrior unleashed another surge of telekinetic power. The air around the Broodlord shimmered, twisting. The massive Tyranid shrieked, not in aggression but in agony, as an unseen force began to crush its internal organs. Its limbs spasmed wildly, its powerful body contorting under the immense pressure. Kaelin could hear the sickening crack of its exoskeleton. With a final brutal surge, the warrior drove its energy blade deep into the Broodlord's head, piercing its brain. The Tyranid's body went limp, its psychic presence instantly fading, leaving a void of silence in the minds of the lesser creatures. The remaining Gaunts and Hormagaunts, without their synapse connection, hesitated, confused and leaderless. They became easy prey for the squad's lasguns, or for the warrior's swift, relentless culling. Within minutes, the chamber was cleared. The air, thick with the smell of death and ozone, was heavy with the aftermath of pure, unadulterated power. Kaelin and his squad stood panting, their lasguns hot, their faces pale with shock and awe. The efficiency of the warrior was terrifying. It wasn't just fighting, it was hunting, dissecting, annihilating. The cloaked figure turned to them, its energy blade still humming softly. "The central spire," the mental voice echoed. "Lead the way." "This path is cleared," Kaelin swallowed, nodding. Yes, through here. This tunnel leads to a service access shaft to the spire." He pointed towards a dark passage. The alliance, however temporary, was holding, but the sheer destructive capability of their new companion was a constant, unsettling presence. They were walking a fine line between salvation and utter obliteration, guided by a force they could barely comprehend. The Tyranids and Orcs were monsters, but this warrior was something else entirely. A cold, calculating hunter, unleashed upon a galaxy consumed by war, and the spire, where the greatest threats would gather, was calling. The tunnel to the service access shaft was a tight, oppressive space, reeking of stale air and the metallic tang of old machinery. Elara's injured leg protested with every step, but she pushed through the pain, her eyes fixed on Kaelin's back. The other guardsmen, grim-faced and silent, followed suit. They were no longer just soldiers fighting for survival. They were a desperate escort for a silent, lethal force. The cloaked warrior led the way, a dark silhouette against the faint emergency lighting, its movements fluid and impossibly quiet. It seemed to glide over the uneven floor, its energy blade now sheathed, its presence a cold, watchful weight. Kaelin felt its mental probing occasionally, a brief, dispassionate scan of his thoughts, not for malice, but for information, for anything that could aid its hunt. He resisted the urge to flinch, knowing any sign of weakness might be misinterpreted. As they ascended the service shaft, the sounds of war intensified, no longer distant rumblings but a cacophony that vibrated through the metal structure. The distinct chittering of Tyranids was overlaid with the guttural roars of Orcs, a horrifying symphony of destruction. They were getting closer to the surface, to the heart of the maelstrom. They emerged into a vast, cavernous space beneath the central spire, a former maintenance depot, now a choked testament to ruin. Overhead, colossal support beams groaned under immense strain, and through gaping holes in the ceiling, Kaelin could see the sickly red glow of the burning city. The air was thick with smoke, dust, and the cloying scent of alien organisms. Many targets, the warrior's voice echoed in Kaelin's mind, colder and more focused than before. Denser, stronger, he looked up. The spire itself, a once proud monument of imperial engineering, was now a grotesque battleground. Tyrannid bioforms clung to its reinforced walls like a plague, their scythed limbs tearing at the plasteel, their acid spittle melting through armor. Below, in the streets surrounding the spire's base, the remaining orc hordes had converged, drawn by the titanic struggle. They roared challenges at the Tyrannids, firing crude sluggers and charging with reckless abandon, a green tide crashing against a chitinous wall. The spire's summit, Kaelin articulated, pointing upwards. That's where the main synapse creatures will be, the ones directing the swarm, and any remaining orc war bosses will be drawn to the largest fight. The warrior didn't reply verbally, but Kaelin felt a surge of mental affirmation, a predatory focus. It leaped, a blur of dark fabric onto a crumbling gantry. Without pause, it scaled the sheer face of the spire with effortless grace, its form a mere shadow flickering amidst the chaos. It wasn't climbing so much as flowing upwards, gravity seemingly an optional suggestion. Kaelin knew their role now. They were meant to be the distraction, the bait. Squad, move to the eastern stairwell. We draw their attention away from the warrior's ascent. Their laser spat energy, cutting down a few stray gaunts that had detached from the main swarm. The Tyrannids, though focused on the main battle, registered the new threat. A wave of Hormagaunts surged towards them, their claws clicking, their speed alarming. The guardsmen formed a tight defensive perimeter, their training taking over. Keep firing. Don't let them get close. Kaelin roared, his own laser chattering, carving burning holes in the chitinous tide. Elara, despite her limp, stood shoulder to shoulder with her comrades, her shots precise and deadly. Above them, the cloaked warrior had reached a higher level, its energy blade ignited, blazing like a miniature sun in the smoke-filled air. Kaelin watched, awestruck, as it engaged a cluster of Tyrannid warriors. The sight was mesmerizing, a dance of death, the warrior a whirlwind of speed and light, the alien creatures falling like puppets with cut strings. Suddenly, a new, more horrifying sound split the air, a high-pitched guttural shriek that seemed to tear at the very fabric of reality. From the summit of the spire, a truly colossal creature emerged, a hive tyrant, its bat-like wings unfurled, scattering tyrannid spores, and its scything talons, each as long as a man, twitched with malevolent intent. Its psychic presence was a palpable wave of oppressive dread, crushing the will of all but the most disciplined. Kaelin felt a primal terror grip him, a deep-seated instinct to flee. The hive tyrant's multifaceted eyes fixed on the cloaked warrior, recognizing the immense, unnatural threat. It shrieked again, a command that rippled through the entire Tyrannid host. The creatures below surged with renewed ferocity, and even the orcs seemed to sense a shift in the tide, turning their attention more fully to the approaching Tyrannid reinforcements. A worthy foe, the warrior's mental voice resonated in Kaelin's mind, devoid of fear, filled only with an eerie satisfaction. The alpha of this swarm. The hive tyrant descended, a monstrous shadow against the burning sky, its weapons, a massive bone sword and a venom cannon, glowing with dark power. The cloaked warrior met it head-on, an impossible speck of defiance against the colossal alien. Below, Kaelin's squad was being overwhelmed. Hormagaunts were swarming over their barricade, their claws raking. One guardsman fell, screaming, consumed in a spray of acid. Another was dragged away by a ravener, its tunneling claws erupting from the ground. Fall back! Secondary positions, Kaelin yelled, but it was too late. They were surrounded. The orcs, seeing the guardsmen in distress, let out a triumphant roar and began to advance, adding to the suffocating pressure. A hulking orc knob, its power claw crackling, burst through the Tyrannid ranks, fixing its gaze on Kaelin. Looks like we're attracting all the wrong kind of attention, Sergeant. Elara gasped, firing a last desperate volley. Her leg gave out, and she collapsed, barely dodging a lashing Hormagaunt tail. Kalen stood over her, his laser gun humming, its power pack almost depleted. He stared at the approaching orc knob, then up at the impossible battle raging above. The cloaked warrior and the hive tyrant were a blur of motion. Energy blades clashing against chitin, psychic powers twisting the very air. He knew with a chilling certainty that this was the end for them. They had done their part. They had brought the hunter to its prey. Just as the orc knob raised its power claw for a killing blow, a blinding flash erupted from the spire's summit. Not the warrior's blade, but a massive concussive wave of pure force. It slammed into the hive tyrant. Not with an explosion, but with an implosion. Similar to how the battle wagon had been destroyed, the immense creature shrieked, a sound of unimaginable agony and confusion. Its chitin buckling inwards, its powerful wings tearing. It was being crushed, compressed into nothingness by an unseen colossal fist. The hive tyrant exploded in a shower of black ichor and twisted biomatter, its psychic presence vanishing as if it had never been. The effect on the tyrannid swarm was immediate and devastating. Without their synapse creature, they descended into a frenzied, mindless state, turning on each other, their coordinated attack dissolving into chaotic, instinctual violence. The force wave didn't stop there. It spread outwards, a silent, invisible tsunami. It struck the orc knob charging Kalen, stopping it mid-stride. The orc froze. Then slowly, sickeningly, its armor began to buckle, its body compressing, its eyes bulging. With a final, wet crunch, it collapsed into a flattened, unrecognizable mass. The wave swept over the remaining tyrannids and orcs below, flattening them in their tracks. It wasn't a blast, but a profound, silent, crushing force. Thousands of Xenos, a moment before a rampaging horde, were reduced to grotesque, pancake-like forms, their life snuffed out in an instant. The manufactorum floor vibrated, groaning under the sudden immense pressure. Kalen shielded Alara as the devastating wave passed over them. It felt like a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs, but it left them unharmed. The force was precise, targeting only the Xenos. Silence. A terrifying, profound silence descended upon the battlefield, broken only by the crackle of distant fires and the groaning of the spire. The entire lower levels of the manufactorum, once teeming with life and death, were now a vast, flattened charnel house. The cloaked warrior stood at the summit, its energy blade now pulsing with a steady, serene light. It looked down at the devastation it had wrought, its form radiating an aura of cold, triumphant power. This wasn't merely a fight, it was a purge, an absolute cleansing. The primary threats are neutralized, the warrior's voice echoed in Kalen's mind, a note of finality in its tone. The hunt is complete. Kalen pushed himself up, staring at the sheer scale of the destruction. It was incomprehensible. This being had single-handedly annihilated a substantial portion of 2 Xenos invasions. What remained of the Imperial Guard, the civilians, might actually have a chance now. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, mixed with a chilling understanding of the raw, unbound power he had witnessed. "Thank you," he managed, his voice hoarse, speaking aloud to the distant figure. You saved us all." The warrior remained silent, its form unmoving for a long moment. Then, with a subtle shift, it turned its attention from the ruined city to the vast, burning horizon. "Survival is your concern, not mine," the mental voice stated. Its detachment absolute. The galaxy is large. Many more hunts await. With that, the cloaked figure blurred, its form shimmering and distorting. It wasn't just fast, it was warping reality, bending space around itself. In a silent, impossible instant, it ascended into the void, a streak of darkness against the inferno-swallowed sky, and then it was gone. Just like its arrival, its departure was a phenomenon that defied all logic, leaving only a lingering hum in the air and the impossible scene of destruction below. Kalen stood amidst the wreckage, Alara slowly sitting up beside him, the remaining 2 guardsmen staring in stunned silence. The sheer emptiness left by the warrior's departure was almost as profound as its terrifying presence. "It's gone," Alara whispered, a mix of awe and fear in her voice. "It actually did it." "It did," Kalen confirmed, his gaze sweeping over the flattened Xenos. It held up its end of the bargain. He keyed his voxcaster, his voice shaking slightly, but filled with a new, unshakable resolve. "Captain Valerius! This is Sergeant Kalen." "Do you copy, sir?" The Arcana Manufactorum is clear. The Tyrannid Synapse creatures, they're gone. The main Orc forces annihilated. A moment of static, then Valerius's voice, raspy with disbelief. Kaelin, are you saying it worked? This unknown entity, it dealt with them? Yes, sir, Kaelin confirmed, a grim smile touching his lips. It cleared the path. The orbital docks should be within reach. We need to move the survivors now. Emperor's mercy, Valerius breathed, a rare note of genuine shock in his voice. I wouldn't have believed it. Get to the docks, Sergeant. Report for extraction. And Kaelin, when you get here, you'll have one hell of a story to tell. The sounds of distant fighting still echoed across Varkos Prime, but the immediate, overwhelming threat had been neutralized. The remaining Xenos forces, leaderless and broken, would still need to be purged, but the tide had irrevocably turned. A path, however narrow and dangerous, had been forged from the jaws of annihilation. Kaelin helped Ilara to her feet. Come on, trooper. We've still got a job to do. As they began to pick their way through the ruined manufactorum towards the distant promise of rescue, Kaelin looked back at the spire, the symbol of humanity's defiance now scarred but standing. The memory of the cloaked warrior, the silent hunter, would forever be etched into his mind. It was not a savior, not an ally in the traditional sense. It was a force of nature, an ultimate predator, a cold, elegant instrument of destruction that had, for a fleeting moment, aligned its hunt with humanity's desperate struggle for survival. The galaxy remained a dark and dangerous place, filled with unimaginable horrors, but for a brief, terrifying moment, on a dying world named Varkos Prime, humanity had witnessed a power that transcended even the grim realities of their existence. It was a power that offered no answers, no comfort, only the chilling promise that somewhere out there, the hunt would always continue. And perhaps, Kaelin thought, that was enough. They had survived, and in the grim calculus of the Imperium, that was a victory in itself, however temporary, however costly, however inexplicable. The shadow had passed, leaving behind a scarred but hopeful future, and a story whispered in hushed tones of the day a hunter from beyond the stars saved Varkos Prime.